Afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another Live at the Waterhole with African. My name is Ben Coley, and I will be with you for the next 2 hours. And I'm very, very excited to see what the African bush has in store for us today. This is my first visit back to Live at the Waterhole for a little bit of time. I've been doing a lot of work and traveling elsewhere. So, very much looking forward to getting my bush fix along with you this afternoon or morning, depending on where you are. I have my cup of tea in hand. I hope you have some other similar beverage. And it seems that we've started out at the beautiful scene that is Tembe Elephant Park with plenty of elephants and some lovely impalas in the foreground as well. Don't forget, this is a live and interactive show for the next 2 hours. So if any of you have any burning questions for me about nature or anything else for that matter in general, please do send them through as per on the screen there. And hopefully I'll be able to read some of those questions out and also hopefully be able to answer them. But even if I don't, I will have a good crack at them. And anything I don't know the answer to, I will see if I cannot find out. And next time I'm on, I will share those answers with you. But what a lovely, lovely day it is out here in South Africa. We've had quite a few cooler days recently. In fact, the last 2 or 3 days has actually required me wearing fleece, which is a little unexpected for this time of the year. We normally expect October to be a very, very warm month out here. Very much the change of seasons coming into the hot months of the summer. But it's been delightful the last few days, sort of high 20s, cooling off in the evening. There's been a bit of a breeze around, and you can see even down there in Maputoland, there, so the eastern side of the country, close to the coast, there is a little bit of cloud cover in the air. It's a spectacular day, and obviously a good day for the elephants to come down and enjoy a little bit of shade. I'm not quite sure what the temperature would be down there at the moment. I imagine probably mid 30s, but always a good day to come down and have a drink. I see we've had a couple of messages coming through already. Thank you very much, Penelope Kenyon, welcoming me back. Thank you, Penelope. It's great to be back. I always look forward to these little stints that we do on Live at the Waterhole, and I'm very, very excited that hopefully everything goes according to plan in December. I will be back at Juma for a couple of weeks, and having not been on a live drive for quite some time due to a variety of other commitments, I am super, super excited to get back to Juma, and I'm so looking forward to hopefully meeting Columba's little princess as well and catching up with some old friends on the Juma Reserve. So, yeah, that's very much highlighted in my calendar, and I am unusually excited. I have missed Juma and being a part of the live drives, so cannot wait to be back. It's 24 degrees in Tempe, so I was around about right with my initial thoughts. So a very, very pleasant afternoon, not too hot, a lovely, lovely summer's day without too much sweating. But the elephants, it seems, are still going to take the opportunity to enjoy the waterhole. Sandy Franklin, good afternoon to you as well. And Jive Bunny, greetings from Somerset. Of course, a place relatively close to my original home. My parents live in Dorset these days, so the county next door in England, pretty much. And somewhere I spent a few months at the beginning of the year catching up with friends and family for a while. An old punkster welcoming me back. Thank you, old punkster. It is wonderful to be back. But yes, Jive Bunny, I have been enjoying the sky over here. For those of you who don't know, I do have a little bit of an obsession. I was going to say interest, but I'm going to say obsession with the night sky and with astronomy and all things star related. So yes, I have missed the southern hemisphere sky, having grown up in the UK, but never been quite as involved in the astrotourism circuit as I am now. When I do go back, I have to relearn the Northern Hemisphere sky. But I'm also very excited to share that I have. The reason I haven't been around for the last sort of 3 weeks is I have been traveling the world, and I was out in Dubai for 2 weeks doing some astronomy training for some of the desert guides out there. So I got to spend 2 weeks in Dubai, going into the desert each night and training the guides how to use their telescope and how to discuss the objects. And it was a great opportunity for me to delve into some Arabic star lore, of course, which is very, very prominent. More than yeah, 2/3 of all the stars in the night sky still hold their traditional Arabic names. So there's a very, very rich history in the Middle East when it comes to astronomy. So that was very, very special. I thoroughly enjoyed that, even if I did have to get to grips with seeing a few new constellations. But despite being out in the desert, it's still relatively light skies there compared to here, where I am based in Hoedspruit. Even just a few minutes outside town, we are so blessed to have such clear skies in these more rural areas, and they really are spectacular. But lovely to see some elephants again. Mostly bulls, as we normally seem to expect down here at Tenby, and just always, I do miss just watching them mill around and do their own thing, always doing something, some having a drink, some having a dust bath, some feeding. Little interactions, particularly again amongst similar aged elephants, and just trying to work out who's who in the zoo in terms of the pecking order there. Always fascinating to try and figure out the hierarchy amongst them, watch their little interactions. Such social creatures, of course. Good afternoon, Lenny, as well. But that's beautiful with these little cumulus clouds, gives the sky a nice little bit of depth, and a particularly beautiful turquoise this afternoon. Also nice to have the size comparison, see the impala in front of the elephant. We sometimes forget when we're just looking at an elephant on the screen, uh, their immense bulk, and when you put them up against something a lot smaller, it really does hit home. But of course, it's an exciting time for impalas at the moment. In the next month or two, it will be time for a lot of these impalas to give birth, and we will be utterly inundated with little baby impalas running around everywhere, forming their little creches, delighting us with their little matchstick legs, frolicking around in the grass. Hopefully, there'll be some rain coming soon, and they'll have lots of nice produce to feed on. And by the time I get back into Juma, we should have lots and lots of little impalas skipping around everywhere. It's always a highlight of the year to see that influx of new life coming through. Wildebeests and everything else. Baby warthogs are a real favourite of mine. So they're like little chipolatas running around with legs. Incredibly cute. Sandy Franks, warm for this time of the year in the US. Yes, I suppose October for you. It should be cooling off. You're recovering from a flood. Well, I'm sorry to hear about that. I wish you could send us some water. Well, we could certainly do. It's been a pretty dry winter. We did in Hoedspruit have a little smattering of rain about a week or so ago. And when I mean smattering, it was literally just a smattering. It was a few drops here or there. But we are hoping for some good rains. Of course, the bush is very, very dry at the moment. It may not look it here at Tenby, of course, closer to the ocean, slightly different climate there. And the underground water being contained by this waterhole is allowing this vegetation a little bit more access. But yeah, out in the bush proper, here in the Lowveld, it is very, very dry. But interestingly, the trees have started to bud. We are seeing some little baby leaves coming through. We are seeing some little flowers beginning to pop in here and there. So I just hope there'll be enough water coming soon so that the trees can make use of this new growth, and it's not to no avail. I've even heard some frogs calling lately. I had some painted reed frogs the other night. I've discovered there's a mottled shovel-nosed frog who is living somewhere in a burrow in my garden. He's absolutely deafening when the sprinkler comes on. The little mottled shovel-nose goes absolutely mad. And if you've never heard a mottled shovel-nose, it's a tiny little frog, maybe only about 3 centimeters long, with a pointed snout as the sort of tapered snout with a flat end, hence the shovel nose, and they dig little burrows and they cool from inside those burrows, which has the effect of really echoing out the sound that they cause. And it is deafening, it's almost painful on the ears. Amazing something so small can produce such a loud volume, but very, very hard to figure out where they're coming from. And I still haven't found where his little burrow is, but he's very happy when the sprinkler comes on. Oh, Laura Moore, you're asking with all my travels, where do I feel that sort of comfort of returning home? Well, my brain is very confused at the moment. Oh, Laura Moore, I have done a lot of traveling of late. I've been in New Zealand. In fact, just in the last 6 months, I've been in New Zealand, I've been in the UK, I've been in Dubai. So not just the Southern African countries, I really have been globe trotting, which is wonderful. And whilst I don't want to make this all about astro stuff all the time. It's just so nice for me to see that there is so much interest worldwide in astrotourism, and it's given me a wonderful opportunity to experience the different cultural aspects of it. I've been learning about Maori star lore, so now about Arabic and Bedouin star lore. Some of the stuff up in the northern hemisphere from a Germanic and a Norse perspective. It really is. I consider myself very, very fortunate. But honestly, where is home? Home is very much here in South Africa. I was away for quite a long time and I missed it dearly. And it's the wildlife. It always draws me back. It's been nearly 20 years immersed in African wildlife, and wherever I go where it isn't, I miss it. But it is wonderful to experience all these different areas, the different ecosystems, the different biomes, the different landscapes, and the associated wildlife that comes with it, whether it be vegetation or mammal or bird. Obviously, my world bird list has improved. I didn't get very many birds in Dubai. I didn't have the chance to see too much wildlife up there, but out in the desert, I did get to see a couple of scorpions. I saw a horned viper, possibly a sand boa. We're not quite sure. So a couple of different snakes. I saw Arabian oryx, a couple of different gazelle species, and of course I got to see camels, which was very exciting because I don't think I'd seen a camel in the flesh other than in a zoo up until then. But yeah, I keep coming back to African wildlife. There is something so special, whether I'm looking at it live on a screen like I am now, or actually immersed in it. There is something just always draws me back to Southern African wildlife. Even having spent a year in Tanzania a while back as well, there's something very special about the Kruger National Park and that surrounding area. And it was one of the first things I did when I got back here, was just go into the park for a night and drive around. And I had a lioness walking past the car. I saw a leopard quite close to the road, lots of elephant sightings. One thing I did notice, as is unfortunately often the case, it's very difficult to find a rhino now, but that's another story, I suppose. Um, but just even today, I was in a little wildlife estate at some point this morning, had to pop out to somebody's house there, and there was a giraffe in the road. I mean, where else can you go where you can be driving down the road and you have to wait for a giraffe to cross? It's incredibly special, and having been away for a little while, I'm appreciating it again now, which makes it even more wonderful. Okay, I think we are going to change location now. The elephants seem to be all milling around in the background. We're going to go down to Founder's Lodge in the Eastern Cape and see what's afoot down there. Ah, well, speaking of giraffe crossing the road, there we go. Got a beautiful giraffe bull who has either just finished having a drink. It looks like he might be disappearing. No, come back. Oh, very special animals, giraffes. I have even in all my travels, nothing like a giraffe, that's for sure. I see a few other people commenting on the weather. Penelope Kenyon again, pointing out that yes, of course, KZN had some snow recently. I saw the photos. Pretty amazing. Roads being closed. Definitely some strange things happening in the world in terms of the weather. Oh, there's a giraffe. But yeah, pretty amazing that every now and again we do get snow. In South Africa, there used to be a ski resort here many years ago. I don't think it's, well, I know it's not still active, but up in the Drakensberg Mountains, very occasionally in the Johannesburg area, snow, but not often KZN gets snow, that's for sure. And Jive Bunny, you're pointing out that yes, we had Columba and her little princess on the Sunrise Drive this morning. I didn't catch the drive, unfortunately, but I did see on the social media feeds lots of screenshots, which is again why I am so excited to hopefully have a chance to meet the little princess. It's been a long time since I've seen young leopard cubs, that's for sure. I've had a few opportunities to see them and witness them and watch them growing up over the years of working, particularly in the area around the Savi Sands. But it's been a long time since I saw a young leopard cub in the flesh, as it were. So I'm very excited for that opportunity. I just hope I do get a chance to see them both. And how beautiful is that? He who walks with his head amongst above the trees, as it's translated. I do just love the way they glide. I hope he comes out the other side of those bushes. Sandy Plankton say we make you want to move to Africa. Absolutely. Why not? If you love wildlife, there are not many better places to be, that's for sure. Okay, well, we'll keep an eye on these giraffes and hopefully they will come and have a drink at some point and we can get a closer look. But for the time being, I think we're going to zoom all the way up to Kenya and to Oldonyo Lodge. Ah, beautiful. Speaking of oryx, those beautiful scimitar-like horns that they've got. One of my favorite antelope, the oryx. Such pretty markings around the face. Does this differ from the Gemsbok that we get down here in the south? So this is the East African oryx. So we might have one or two camera issues there. So I think we're going to quickly pop back down to Juma, and I'm sure we'll be back to Old Donyo at some point. Ah, little and large. There's a warthog in the background. Oh, he's off. Got a nice young bull elephant. It's definitely in a bit of go slow mode, I think, this one. But I love watching those little ripples of the musk trunk as he sucks water up. Yeah, this young boy seems quite content just hanging out by the water. He's having a little bit of a fiddle around on the ground though. I'm trying to work out if he's just sort of almost doing the elephant equivalent of twiddling his thumbs, or whether he was actually investigating something there. The tip of his trunk was brushing the surface. It almost looks as if he was investigating something, and then just at the end, putting the trunk to the mouth, possibly analyzing some smells. It's logical to think that there would have been some other elephants there at some point. But particularly that stance he just adopted at the end there with the trunk just sort of curled up and resting on the ground. He's very much in relaxation mode, I think. So probably enjoying the fact that it's not oppressively warm. But yes, looking forward to some rain, looking at the how low that waterhole is. And plenty of general game attracted. They need to be, of course, a little bit careful of that mud. Certainly isn't unheard of, and I've seen it myself, unfortunately, where these animals take unnecessary risks to try and get to the water, and they do get stuck in the mud sometimes, but no danger of it there, looking at the substrate. It's very much a little plunge pool for one, this little watering hole for this elephant here. Of course, massive water requirements, particularly this time of year. Won't be getting very much moisture from the food that he's eating. Will be mostly bark and twigs and the occasional leaf still. You can see there is still a little bit of greenery around, particularly in these lower lying areas from underground water in these drainage lines, but not a huge amount of nutrition and moisture to be had in the sort of daily fodder that he'll be ingesting. So very important to get a sufficient amount of water, well over 100 or somewhere between 100 to 150 liters of water a day required by a full-grown elephant bull, certainly. Tracy, you're asking what the leading cause of death in elephants is besides predation? Well, assuming we're not going to include man and poaching in that, I would think it would be sort of a mixture of malnutrition, really. They're not that susceptible to diseases, so a little bit of malnutrition or fighting amongst each other would be the most other logical ones. I mean, the simple answer is I don't know officially from a statistics perspective. But occasionally elephants do kill each other, particularly musting bulls who are having confrontations. Otherwise, yeah, just the requirement to get enough food, as I always say, to keep that engine running. It requires an awful lot of fuel, and if the pumps dry up, then unfortunately that engine cannot keep running. But you can see this one seems to be fine, in good health. And so there's plenty of greenery, particularly around the lodges and these sort of more drainage liney areas for them to feed on at the moment. And Ian, you're asking if herds ever split. Yes, they do. If there is a problem with resources, if they feel that the herd is getting too big and there isn't a sufficient amount of food in a particular area, then yes, it does happen that breeding herds can split. Uh, Often, in my experience, what I know and what I've seen, it'll often be the sister of the matriarch that may lead a sort of a splinter group and they'll go off and do their own thing, but they will come back and sort of mingle with each other every now and again. But certainly it does happen that they do sometimes split. You said if a herd gets bigger and bigger and there is only a finite amount of food, then it is required. I'd say a lot of that will depend on the specific population dynamics of that herd, and the area to which they are feeding in, or what their home range would be. Generally speaking, there's a pretty good ratio of males to females. And remember, in the elephant society, it'll be the young males are programmed to leave the herd after they've become sexually mature. So once they get into their sort of mid-teens and onwards, they will start spending more and more time away from the herd until they naturally go off and start doing their own thing. But as a rule, the females will all stay together unless circumstances dictate otherwise. Beautiful texture on this marula tree. Wondering what might be living in there. Oh, what is that? Is that a squirrel? Something on this little knot with this broken branch from that marula. Color-wise, I'd say it's probably a tree squirrel. Yeah, good spot. Zoomies. Okay, well, it looks like this young bull is going to head off in search of some more food. Let's go back down to Tempe Elephant Park. Ah, the beautiful Inyala bull. One of my favourite antelopes with the orange socks that they have. And a little Jacana photo bombing as well. Always lovely to see. I must admit, my building is a little bit rusty, having been away for a while. It's actually quite frustrating. I keep hearing bird calls. I used to think myself quite competent with bird calls. And I keep hearing them and going, oh, I know what that noise is, but I can't quite place it. And I have to file through all that, oh, hello, all that information in the brain to try and remember what those calls are. It's like anything. If you stop doing it for a while, you do have a tendency to forget. But the interesting thing I've found is it only takes one sort of eureka moment and you remember what it is, and it just makes that connection again in the head, and that bird call is once again established. All the noises are there, and the frequencies and the pitches. It's just making the association between the noise and the name that sometimes is the problem. Lovely to see an Inyala bull. Not often you see them feeding on reeds like that. I think that would be rather tough and fibrous. Green spaghetti. It's worth pointing out that I'm referring to this Inyala as an Inyala bull. Whereas if we did see a male impala, he would be an impala ram. So the female impalas are ewes, as would a female inyala. But whereas a kudu, for example, we would have bulls and cows, not ewes, because there is a sort of an unspoken rule that 100 kilograms, or around about 220 pounds, is the point at which you change names. For the male of the species, rams then become bulls over the weight of 100 kilograms, and for the females, they are ewes. So more than 100 kilograms, they become cows. So Inyala is sort of that cutoff. As a female Inyala is less than 100 kgs, and generally speaking, a male Inyala is more than 100 kgs. I see a young ram there at the back having a bit of a scratch, and the rest of these will be heavily pregnant females. So normally mid-November we would expect to start seeing the first youngsters, but we do get some that come early, and then say there will be just a great flood of baby impalas moving across the land in the next month or two. It's interesting to see an Inyala feeding off those reeds. It's not something I see very often. Must be something in there that he feels that he needs, because there's perfectly good bush and grass next to him. There must be a reason he's going for those reeds. Maybe some sort of chemical in there that, from a self-medication perspective, or he fancies a little bit more roughage for the digestive system. If only we could speak in Yala and ask. But obviously, he had his fill of reed and is now going to. A lovely scene, and always a good idea in the harshness of winter to go and just hang out by a waterhole, let the animals come down to you. How beautiful would this be, just sitting there at the moment, and we've got impalas and inyalas and elephants milling around, coming and going. There'll be bird life there, and you never know what else might suddenly appear out of the bushes. It's one of the things I love about the bush, that unscripted nature. You might see nothing, you might see everything, you might see a brief glimpse of something, but you just don't know. And you can never switch off because anything could happen at any moment. One having a bit of a scratch. Ah, there we go. Good scratch there behind the ears, on the ears. I see a lot of elephants scratching up against that tree. Some stories to be told. But I think we are going to head up to Hyena Pan next and see what's happening there. We're getting a good trip around the various locations today. Oh, more elephants and some little ones. I can't wait to see little baby elephants. Wow, see, that's proper dry up there, huh? Very, very desolate. Okay, looks like one or two camera issues there, unfortunately, but we'll head over to Naledi Dam for some other elephants. Also having a drink. You see, you're always going to be choosing the fresher water rather than that dirty water with things growing in it on the left. If this little one can find a spot, yeah, absolutely. Oh, look, the tiny one. I do love a baby elephant. Very young though, this one. Not more than a few months old, I wouldn't think. These youngsters are too clever though. They always know to hide in amongst the rest of the herd. They hide under mum, and they always seem to manage to put a larger individual between the camera and themselves. You just see a trunk moving in amongst those big legs. I honestly don't think there's anything out here that makes me smile more goofily than watching a little baby elephant. You definitely now at least see the little one a little bit more clearly, sitting in mum's shadow. Looks a little bit tired, but don't know how long or how far these elephants have moved in order to get to this waterhole. Don't go, little one. see the very angular forehead of this one closest to the camera. Uh, Usually a sign that it will be a female. Males generally have a more domed shaped skull. The female is much more angular, particularly as they get a little bit older. Try and have a drink, this little one. This female's trying to bully her way in. Very small elephant, eh? Barely reached mum's mammary glands. They're really stretching to get that head up there. Decent sized herd, this, it seems. A few more finding a way in. This one having a little bit bullish. Just behind the little one. I'm doing a good job just staying out of the scrum there. But she looks like a decent aged female, this one, so probably not her first calf. Comes with a little experience, knows what she's doing. What a beautiful moment. course, a young elephant will suckle for, well, potentially a good 2 years as a very sort of generalized rule out. Well, within wildlife, the weaning period is very, very similar to that of the gestation period, there or thereabouts. There are, of course, exceptions to every rule, but from what I know, it is not the easiest. Oh, don't get left behind, little one. It's not the easiest thing to do to hand rear elephants just because of the complexities of an elephant cow's milk and the fact that a youngster has to suckle over such a long period of time. There has been various research that proves that the composition of the milk, the proteins, the vitamins, the minerals contained within them change as the little one grows older to meet the requirements of a growing young elephant like that. So not the easiest thing to do to synthesize elephant cow milk. You need multiple sort of different formulas of that milk, depending on what stage of life the young elephant is. But nature knows what it's doing. It's quite hard for us to replicate. Sarah, you're asking whether elephants use their tails for communication. To some extent, although not as much as some other animals, not as much as the cats, for example. But one of the signs you can always see of a fairly stressed elephant, its tail will be cocked, sort of sticking out, not quite at right angles, but will be being visibly held away from the body, put it that way. That's normally the sign of a stressed or an upset elephant. So it is something that we look for, but more so, obviously, with the elephant, it's the vocalizations and particularly the ears, which are their prominent form of communication. So not as prevalent as it is in some other animals, but to some extent. But I think in a social situation, it's not something that they would see. It's not a very defined tail. It's not very obvious. If you're face to face with an individual, you'd struggle to see the tail. We did actually see, I remember seeing on one of these feeds up at Old Onyo, an elephant that had no tail at all. And it didn't look as if we managed to zoom in quite close, and it didn't look as if that the elephant had lost it in some sort of fight or an altercation. It almost looked like a genetic defect, whereby it was just never born with a tail because there was no obvious scarring or anything there. It was just a little lump. And the elephant seemed absolutely fine. Maybe just didn't have anything to cover his or her modesty, and that was about it. Where are you off to, little one? Where are you going? Spend some time with auntie or sister. So mum very trusting. But this little one will be done by all members of the family group. And why wouldn't you? Yes, Sanjiv, it is special to watch an elephant mum suckle her calf, certainly. I'm sure she feels very empowered by the whole situation, and it doesn't look to be such a traumatic experience as it does in some animals. If you've ever seen like a buffalo, for example, try and drink, obviously it's designed to do this, but they're quite aggressive when they drink. It's a way to stimulate the milk production. They almost do some sort of headbutting of the udders. It looks as if it would be rather uncomfortable. It seems to be a lot more sedate in elephants. It's very, very special to see. This one having a good scratch as well. What are you up to, little elephant? Oh, so sweet. But that's very young. It's always very difficult to estimate an age, but just looking at the size, and it's quite slight in appearance in terms of its musculature and everything else, I can't imagine this little calf is much more than a month old. It'd be interesting to try and see if there's still lots of pink around the ears, how fluffy the little one is. You always get the impression these little ones just to wander over and say, I'm going to watch what my sister, brother, niece, nephew, whatever this one may be, uh, just watching and learning. So much to learn from an elephant's perspective. Trying to see if it's a little baby boy or a baby girl. I haven't quite got a clear enough view yet. My gut says baby girl, but unsubstantiated. Try and use that trunk to practice, but it'll take a few years to get the required coordination for that. No, we've had enough. We'll go back to mum. I think mum must have given off a little rumble there, because as soon as she turned to leave, the little one knew it was time to go as well. There was, of course, so much communication going on between these elephant herds that we can't hear with our hearing. I was actually chatting to somebody only last night about this new idea of doing sound safaris, where people go out with directional microphones and they've got sort of laptops on board that they can collect all of the sound coming off from, say, an elephant herd and then process it and sort of squeeze it into the range of hearing that our ears can actually pick up. So there are now ways that we can listen with our own ears to all of those communications that are going on in between herds and over long distances as well. It's the nice thing about technology. We don't want technology to affect the holistic aspect of the bush too much, but if we can use it to better understand and better experience this wildlife, then it becomes a very worthwhile tool. It's something I'd very much like to be a part of, one of these sound safaris. I hope I have the opportunity to experience one at some point. I have been out on drive with directional microphones where you can sort of point them in the direction of elephants feeding, for example, and you can really hear the chewing and the plucking of the grass or the way they're sort of ripping the bark off. But to actually now be able to channel the sound below or outside of our range of hearing and make it audible to us would be a very, very special experience. Just add another dimension. Very spread out, this herd as well. Sometimes you see herds moving very much together as a group, particularly if there's a young one involved. But this group very spread out. See quite a few of them left the waterhole quite early, and the others are sort of slowly following on in the background. But again, interesting to see how different herds go around their lives and their little interactions between one another. Perhaps they just feel particularly relaxed at the moment and feel no need to stay together. Good visibility, of course, at the moment, with so little vegetation around. But looking at the landscape, it does make you wonder how all these elephants do find enough food to keep going on a daily basis, particularly for a mother like this who's now producing milk. She'll be having to find enough food not only for herself, but also for her body to create all of that sufficient nutrients for that little one. I want a baby elephant, but I can't have one. Okay, well, that was very, very special. Always a treat to spend some time with the little elephant. We're going to head over to Rosie's pan next and see what's is there. Let's go find out. I wondered if there was some more elephants there. You could see the sort of the concentric ripples coming from the right-hand side of the screen. Triple trouble. Some young bulls by the look of it. Indeed, Catherine, beautiful view of Ellie's all round. Elephants all over, often the way. They say they do like to come down during the middle of the day, the heat of the day, and have a drink. But we've seen Ellie's in most locations. Oh, we've got some kudus coming in from the back as well. See how well they blend into the environment, particularly, well, this time of year because of the coloration of their fur, but also those little white stripes that I'm sure we'll get a closer look at, particularly if they come and have a drink. And that ability to just stand perfectly still, what we call those disruptive markings, those stripes just blend them perfectly into the branches and the twigs, and they are so difficult to see. Sometimes it's very normal to see a kudu and you sit and watch the kudu for a while, and then you realize there's another one and then another one, and actually there's five or six there that you just didn't see until they start moving. So you wouldn't know that one's there just to the right of that little green tree. Yeah, there we go. They have this ability to stand perfectly still, which is a anti-predator defense. But that one behind those twigs there, where he was standing still, it was I didn't see it either, almost completely invisible until he started moving. So simple, but yet so effective, those little disruptive markings. Sandy Franklin, how long do you have to boil contaminated water to make it drinkable? Honestly, I don't know, and I would be uncomfortable giving you a figure in case somebody says, "Ah, right, well, Ben said it was okay," and then you develop bilharzia or something. So I'm not going to give you a figure. I think to be safe, a few minutes, but I don't know if there is a specific amount of time. It may differ depending on what is in there, but I would always suggest for that caution and boil it for longer than you think. Because particularly if you are struggling for water and you have to boil water because there isn't any other drinking water, the last thing you want to do is ingest some bacteria which could potentially then give you diarrhea or cause you to vomit, which is then just going to dehydrate you further. And things are going to spiral out of control very quickly. Remember, it doesn't take long in a complete absence of water for us to succumb to dehydration. So yeah, I don't know the official amount, but I would always assume more than I think. If you are stuck out in the bush, uh, ways that you can collect purer water. Obviously, if it's has rained or if there's been dew, if you can scoop water out of sort of natural cavities in rocks that have collected, that will be better than some sort of fetid water that hippos have been lying. You can collect your own moisture by putting sort of plastic around leaves and things and hoping to capture some morning dew. Otherwise, it's always best to dig close to an existing water hole and let that hole sort of fill with water. It'll be naturally filtered through the soil, and that will get rid of a lot of the stuff in there. But still a good idea to boil it, assuming you have the ability to make fire, of course. Struggling to see those little markings, but you can see again around the face. A lot of animals have markings around the face, particularly around the eyes, just to sort of break up the outline of an eye, because an eye is a very obvious part of the body, and nobody wants to think that they are being looked at. Again, there's little sashes, those little white sashes just under the eye. Lots of theories for them. Does it break up the outline of the eye? Does it reflect water into the eye to help them see better in lower light conditions, particularly kudus preferring, as a rule, thicker areas? Could it even draw attention to the eye, a bit like eyeliner for social interactions? Again, we have lots of theories, but we don't know for sure. Maybe it's war paint, who knows? But I love their little milky moustaches that they've got. This looks like they've had a frothy cappuccino. It'd be nice if this kudu comes to have a drink. It's not something you get to see all the time. I think this elephant's had a good idea. Why stand on the side when you can just walk into the middle of the waterhole and have a little bit of a mud bath at the same time? These kudus want to come for a drink, but I'd also be a bit dubious with the elephants there, particularly the way that elephants can get a little bit protective of their waterholes at times. I see this one having a little nibble on some of that new growth. Watching the elephants very carefully. You're disturbing all of the mud for all of your friends there. It's a sort of increasing circle of murky water around this elephant, scooping up mud to throw on himself. But I am often surprised why elephants don't go into the water a little bit more often, particularly when they know there's no danger of crocodiles in a small water hole like this, probably one they know very, very well. You would think from a thermoregulation point of view, it would just be simpler to walk into the water like this. A bit of a queue of kudus. A kudu queue. This being given a bit of an eye from that elephant there, I think. Be interesting to see if the elephants will tolerate this kudu. She's obviously very thirsty. Go on, girl. Good. Get in there. Good for you. Please let me drink, Mr. Elephant. No. Seems that was it. But of course, they have a different digestive system to the elephants. The four-chambered stomach, the ruminants, of course, these antelope species, so far, far more efficient at extracting moisture from what they're eating. So they do not need anywhere near as much water as something like an elephant, which has just the one monogastric stomach. But interesting that one plucked up the courage. You thought maybe the others would follow, but it looks as if maybe they've all decided that it's far too scary. Oh, no, one's back. Looks like a slightly younger one here on the right. Ah, but I'm happy the kudus are getting a drink. Victor, with regard to male and female elephants and how they react around waterholes, I always say that, oh, I think this one might be deciding that he doesn't want to share his waterhole. Just going to prove a point. As you were just asking, Victor, this is sort of quite normal behavior. Male elephants do tend to be a little bit more protective over the waterholes, I feel, than the breeding herds. Obviously, if there's youngsters, they will take matters into their own hands and make sure that the family is being protected. But bulls, I think, can be, it's not the right word, but more territorial over water. They can be a little bit more defensive over it as a rule. The testosterone, I think, kicks in a little bit. But most animals are relatively reticent to come and have a drink if there's plenty of elephants around, just because of the danger of, well, being trampled or being rushed at, let's call it that. I think the breeding herds or the females at least, are slightly more tolerant of other species than the males, in my experience. These kudus, I like them. They've got bottle. They don't seem too perturbed. I'm sure there's one male just wandered around just to sort of give them a little nudge to say, I'm not too sure if we want to share our waterhole. So they've just gone around the other side. We'll see if the bulls do the same thing and just sort of casually saunter over there and shoo them away again. Oh, there's a fourth element. Element? Fourth element? The fifth element. A fourth elephant, which has arrived, just sort of snuck up in the background. I see Julia, who's been in my ear this afternoon helping us, has just sent me a little link to boiling water for purification. And I'm just quickly skim reading it here. It's apparently, according to the CDC, water temperatures of 160 degrees Fahrenheit, 70 degrees Celsius can kill most germs within 30 seconds. And by the time it reaches boiling point, germs are eliminated, but they do suggest boiling for at least 1 minute just to be on the safe side. Interestingly, though, if you're at higher altitude, should these elephants are just full of nonsense, aren't they? Higher altitude, they suggest boiling for longer, around about 3 minutes, because the boiling point will be lower in terms of temperature due to a higher altitude. So that's good to know if you're on the top of a mountain, be on the safe side. Apparently, chlorine can be removed, but requires up to 15 to 20 minutes of boiling to be absolutely 100 safe. But boiling won't remove contaminants such as lead and fluoride, and then you would need to use things like filtration or distillation to be sure. So interesting. Who knew there was so much to know about boiling water, but a very good thing to know about, certainly. So they'll take that risk and get it wrong. It's always a good idea to keep abreast of survival tactics, particularly out here. You never know when you may become stranded or lost. So, where to find food, what food you can and can't eat, where to find water, how to purify your water, all vital. How to build shelter, very, very important skills to know. This elephant looks like he's wearing little secret socks. Ah, I see that link that I was sent came from Taxi Lady. Thank you, Taxi Lady. I learned something there as well. I should have maybe if I thought about it, I would have maybe considered boiling for longer or boiling water at altitude for longer due to the lower boiling temperature. But yeah, I think as I said, always better err on the side of caution. Those kudus have got tired of this game of being slowly herded by elephants. But that's what elephants do, particularly these males. There's no aggression, but it's just because they can, I think. I'm bigger than you. I'm just going to prove a point, walk in your general direction, and you will move. But it is interesting, those mechanisms of water. I'm going off on a water tangent now, but for those of you unaware of, well, again, my understanding of why the boiling temperature of water is lower at altitude is because there's less atmospheric pressure. And therefore, remember, when you heat something up, what you're actually doing is causing movement. You're causing all those molecules to vibrate, basically, when you get them warmer. And at the normal atmospheric pressure at sea level or thereabouts, just causing problems again. The atmospheric pressure we require to get to 100 degrees Celsius for that water to become particularly vibrant, but at a lower atmospheric pressure, which is what you're going to find up at altitude, there's not so much pressure to sort of keep the water molecules together. So you don't need to impart so much vibration to them for them to start flying apart. So it would make sense. You've got to boil it for longer to attain the same temperature. I feel this elephant who's standing in the water is just the one who's just trying to make a play in terms of hierarchies. They're just showing off to the kudus, just basically pushed this one out the way and stood in the water where he was standing just to prove a point. So it's these little subtle interactions that make elephants so interesting to watch. You're welcome, Sandy Franklin. I hope that that information has helped you, but I also hope that you never have to use it. White-browed scrub robin in the background. Picasso, I don't think there are any bones in an elephant's tail. I think it pretty much stops at the sort of the sacrum, like it would for humans, and the tail itself is just really muscle that is attached to the pelvis. I stand to be corrected. I will have a little look, but to my knowledge, there's no vertebrae moving into the tail on an elephant. It is purely a muscular appendage. I've just had a quick look online. It does look as if there aren't any um, bones in the tail, I don't think. But of course, I always like to check multiple sources because you can never be too careful to make sure that you are getting correct information online. There is so much stuff on there now. They certainly do have seven in the neck, like all other mammals. And the entire vertebral column from skull to the base contains about 60 to 70 individual vertebrae. I didn't know that. John Bello, you're saying you could boil water for 3 days and you still wouldn't drink it if animals have been defecating and urinating in it. Well, I suppose that's up to you, but in a survival situation, you may have to go against your palate, shall we say. But as I said, I hope you never have to worry about that. But I must admit, there is certain water that I've seen, particularly when I was out in Tanzania during the dry season, and we had a little puddle of water there, which was just chock a block full of hippos, like sardines in a can somewhere, and it was just this muddy, slimy cesspit, and it absolutely reeked. And I'm kind of with you that not that there wasn't much liquid water; it was just sludge more than anything else. But there is, yeah, I might draw the line at that. But I hope you never have to get that far. But 3 days should be a sufficient amount. Maybe drop some oil, put some bush willow pods in there to give it a little bit of flavor, let it steep for a while. You never know. Wow, Sandy Franklin, you're saying you're having to boil water at the moment after the flooding, I assume, because of having water and electrical problems and everything's got contaminated. Well, I hope then that that has given you some genuinely usable advice. I'm sorry you're having to go through that. But as I said before, always err on the side of caution. If you've got the ability to boil it for a little bit longer than you think. But it is interesting to me how some animals are more picky. We know that elephants are very picky with their water, but things like lion and leopard, maybe it's probably has to do with the bacteria in their stomach that's better adept for dealing with, let's say, lower quality incomings. But they'll drink out of anything. I've seen lions and leopards drink out of sort of scummy, algae-ridden, tiny little puddles at the side of the road that an elephant would most definitely turn its nose up at. Good microphone on this camera. Actually, hear the ground crunching as the elephant's walking. It's a nice little um, audible signal that I don't normally pick up on these cameras. A little as well. I wonder if there was a signal sent from somewhere because he seemed to be quite happy just bumbling around at the edge of the water there and fiddling, and he suddenly stopped and walked with reasonable purpose to the left, then had another stop again and has decided, no, it's definitely time to move on. So wish we had a elephant translating device. Again, standing very, very still. Wonder if he's picking up signals. I'm sure there's some elephantine messages being passed on that we are not privy to. Stood very, very still for a minute and then carried on his same trajectory. Ooh, something of interest. Interesting smell. Wow, Sandy Franklin, 28-foot wall of water came through town. That's terrifying. I hope everybody is all right, but yeah, I hope everything gets sorted. That sounds like not a good predicament. Kudos, now's your chance. I wonder if those kudos will make a quick entrance now if they're still in the vicinity, but that was very, very nice to see. Well, I think we're going to the northwest now, over to Tower Lodge and see what's going on up there. Typical scene of lots of different animals at Tau, always a bit of an epicenter of action. Zebras, waterbuck, looks like a wildebeest lying down in the background, another elephant having a drink. Always stuff going on at Tau. I'm sure our crocodile or crocodiles will be somewhere in the water as well. Big V cut out of this bull having a drink in his ear. A couple of little piggies. Hello, piggies. They are funny looking things, aren't they? But I've got a lot of time for warthogs. I think a lot of people do. I often say this, but they've transcended ugliness. They're so ugly that they have become cute. Oh, and so none of these are fully grown. I'm wondering if this is not a group of youngsters that have stayed together for a little while, because there seems to be some males and some females there, but I wouldn't say any of them are fully grown yet. They're all very much the same age. Not quite sure at what age the males do separate from the females. That's definitely a male on the right now. You can see the second set of warts down on the snout. Sure if there's anything over on the left, possibly some people moving around the lodge. They kept sort of looking over their shoulders and have vacated now. Not sure if something was bothering them off to the left. I also saw the waterbuck skipped off as well. Possibly some activity at the lodge, which has just made them a little jumpy. This elephant looks like he's lost the tip of his tail as well. He's got no hairs there. Trying to work out whether that trunk looks slightly deformed as well. Seems to be an unusual kink at the bottom. Yeah, possibly some snare damage, maybe. Although I don't think Madikwe has a particular problem with that. Looks like possibly some scar tissue there, just sort of on that little kink. Interesting, a little bit of damage to the tusk and missing the tip of his tail. Not sure what would have happened there. Just showing off that he's still got full 360-degree motion, but say elephants are very adaptable. Trying to think what could have caused elephants to lose the tip of a tail like that. Possibly when he was younger, a run-in with lions, maybe got separated and managed to get away. Obviously, elephants don't have a tendency to bite each other's tails off. It's the only thing I can think of, unless it's a genetic defect, which of course does happen from time to time. That's what I think happened to the one we saw up at Old Donyo with no tail at all. Yeah, Penelope Canyon, you're saying we haven't seen the crocs for about 3 weeks here at Tao. That's strange. There still seems to be enough water there, but of course crocodiles do migrate. I mean, you can occasionally bump into one walking down the road, and we used to see tracks. One of the lodges I used to work, there was one crocodile who used to frequent about three water holes that were only separated by, as the crow flies, probably a few, maybe sort of 200 or 300 meters each, and we quite regularly saw tracks of that one croc walking down the road or through the bush, going from one to the other. And so, under times of severe stress, crocodiles can survive outside of water for prolonged periods of time. Possibly a crocodile, so right in the middle of the screen, just to the right, but I'm not sure if that is or if that's a blob. You see a sort of a little bit of yellowish coloration there. But true masters of camouflage, that's for sure. I have visited Tow Lodge, but I don't know the area well enough to think where the next available water source would be. But it's certainly a lot less water there than I remember there being last time I saw it. The black crake and two little black crakes. Very dry now. Interesting. Just standing very still and just slowly investigating the ground in front of him. like he just picked up a few twigs there, not quite sure what he wants to do with himself. Second little moorhen there as well. So nice to know that the birds have got some water. I've seen various plovers. I saw two teal. A blacksmith lapwing. Of course, this is a good time for the wading birds with all this mud being exposed. Lots of little arthropods living in there that are now within reach. There's little probing bills. Beginning to see more and more insects, beginning to hear the nightjars and things now. Definitely, summer is definitely coming. So frogs, more insects around. I've seen yellow-billed kites and things recently. Warburgs, eagles have come back. I mean, they've been back for a little while, but it's always interesting to see the bush change as the seasons change along with them. Ah, Della, you're asking if I saw the comet. I have to say I did not see the comet, or I haven't yet seen the comet, which is a bit of a travesty. Um, Again, with my recent travels, I've sort of been the wrong hemisphere in order to see it, so it hasn't been visible in the northern hemisphere. Uh, it is pretty much. I spoke to somebody this morning who did see it briefly this morning, but it's getting so close to the sun now, it's becoming very difficult to see. I think today was really the last opportunity to potentially have seen it. I had intended to try and look at it over the last couple of days and set my alarms nice and early to pick it up before sunrise. But unfortunately, just the way it's been, because we've had some strange weather here, we've had a lot of wind. It's been quite cloudy and relatively cool. I haven't had any views, and you need clear views of the eastern horizon to be able to see it because it's very low to the horizon just before sunrise, which I unfortunately don't have here either. So it's a bit of a bad excuse, but I can't control the weather, unfortunately. So no, I haven't. Although for those of you in the northern hemisphere, you will hopefully be able to see it soon. It's pretty much going to disappear behind the sun now for a few days, and it will be becoming visible in the northern hemisphere just after sunset from around about the 13th, 14th of October. You should be able to see it. So underneath Venus, just after the sunset, very close to the horizon. be the best time over the next, well, from about the 14th for the next week or so. That's assuming it survives its passage around the sun. Remember, a comet is a big icy blob of frozen gas and dust. And as it goes around the sun, it obviously gets close to the sun. That melts a lot of it. And we're hoping and expecting it to survive its passage around the sun. And it should be the best time to see it as it is coming or moving away from the sun as of next week. So do keep your eyes peeled. I have seen some beautiful photos that were taken in the southern hemisphere. Beautiful long tail. And we'll be expecting that again for Northern Hemisphere viewers in the next sort of 10 days or so. Comet was actually discovered here in South Africa. Jointly discovered here in South Africa and by an observatory in China. I think it was January last year they first picked it up. I've been quite unlucky with comets. The comet Neowise last year wasn't really visible in the southern hemisphere, or was it whichever one it was called? And there was one about 3 years ago, around about Christmas time, that could be seen after sunset. But again, the weather was awful. I think I remember in that period I didn't see a clear sky for around about probably about 4 weeks. I got one evening where I got about a window of maybe 5 minutes to photograph it. I got something, but nothing I was happy with. But good luck to you Northern Hemisphere viewers in a week or so's time. But we're almost out of time. Speaking of time, we're down to the last minute or so. Thank you very much for joining me today. Thank you for all of the questions and the comments. I will be back again in a few days for another live at the waterhole session, but don't forget after this to catch up with the team with On Safari and see what the bush has to offer us this afternoon on the Sunset Safari. Hopefully, Columba and her little princess will grace us with their presence once more. But I hope you've enjoyed today, a day filled with elephants more than anything else. And enjoy the rest of your day, and we will catch up with you again very, very soon.